You check that Noxie for us, mate?
Sorry, mate. Yeah, nah.
Looks like you could do with the fiery goodness of PointsBet.
It's like hot sauce, but for sport.
And now it comes with lock screen tracker. So you can follow your bet even when you got your hands full.
Cheers, mate. I'd shake your hand, but...
Same game multi from PointsBet, now with lock screen tracker. Yeah, that's built different.
Imagine what you could be buying instead. For free and confidential support, call the number on the screen or visit the website.
Hi, I'm Shaquille O'Neal. I'm wearing Rick's sunglasses, made in Australia.
Shaq loves Australia.
See?
There we
That's
go.
your first commercial right there.
Head to checkout and use the discount code ACES and you'll get 20% off site-wide. Rick's, eyewear that inspires confidence. Welcome back, everyone. Another episode of Tommy Talks. This week, we are lucky to have Kinnear Beatson in the studio. We're talking 38 years of football, someone that's put together some of the most elite lists in the AFL and someone that actually knows what they're talking about. I've never done, I don't think, a podcast with someone that does as a current list manager and in the role, you're obviously transitioning, great man, but 38 years of football. We've seen some clubs that haven't won finals in, the clubs that I'm talking about for 25, 20 years. You've put together some of the most immaculate lists. So first of all, thanks for joining us and can't wait to dive in.
Good to be here, Tommy. Look forward to a good chat.
I don't really know where I'm going to start because I've got so many questions for people that are listening. My head goes to, Buddy Franklin, Jordan Dawson, he's a good friend of the podcast. We've even got some blokes like Tom Papley who tried to leave that we're going to dive in. But I don't want to get into all the big trades yet and all of that. We're going to save that little bit of juice. Obviously, the AFL draft's on tomorrow night as I'm talking today, Tuesday Arvo. Let's just start with you and your journey because you've done such an amazing job and you've been involved in 38 years is just, anyone in any role, 38 years, you become an absolute mastermind. That's what you are. But I want to know how it all started. Like, how did you get into it? Because it's not easy to get into this game and to, keep your job and do such a good job. So take me back to where it all started, Beats.
Yeah, interesting. I was born and bred up at Mount Macedon and always played footy up there. And then from there in secondary school went to Salesian College, Sunbury. And we had a lot of house sports. So I was a house captain and got into captaining teams and all that sort of stuff, which I loved. And then I did a degree in physical education out at Burwood State College. In fact, we had our 50-year anniversary of that group on Sunday. 50 bloody years. Like, it was scary, mate. It's scary.
I'm getting grey beard and all that now, Beats.
I'll get to that. And when I was teaching at Coburg High, I ran into a fellow called Ross Henshaw, who you probably remember, premiership player from North Melbourne, and Ross was coaching Carlton under-19s. And we were at a cricket carnival, as I said, and he was looking for a phys ed stroke assistant coach part-time role with the under-19s. I'd been playing at Keilor, and at the time I think I must have had OP, but OP wasn't diagnosed in those days because I couldn't kick over a Jan tin and had no power, no speed, nothing. And so I took this role with Ross. And in the same year, this was 1988, at the same year I coached the Victorian under-15 schoolboys, applied for that and got the role. And ironically, that team had guys like Jason McCartney, who's now GM of footy at the Giants. Jace played in that team as a 14-year-old. Jordan Croft's dad, Matty Croft, played in that team. Anthony Koutafidis, Paul Hopgood, quite a few of these guys. So it was a great team. And then in 1990, a permanent full-time position became available at Carlton as their Metropolitan Development Officer. So I applied for the role, got the role, and resigned from teaching Queen's Birthday weekend 1990. And then it sort of just evolved from there. Stayed with Carlton for a couple of years, and then the true national draft came in and the metropolitan zones got abolished. So I had the option of either staying at Carlton and working in recruiting, or an offer came up to go and work in what was the new TAC Cup, the Elite Under-18 Victorian program, and run the Western Jets. And I thought, gee, that's going to be an interesting project, starting a club from nothing with 3 months to get it going. And so I did that at operating out of the showgrounds, the Royal Melbourne Showgrounds, with Merv Kane as the coach, who was just a ripper. And then at the end of 93, Scotty Clayton from the Brisbane Bears approached me about taking on a role with them called the Melbourne Manager, which was also recruiting manager because he was going to become GM of footy. And it sort of all just evolved from there. So a little bit right time, right place, put your head down, work hard, and things tend to look after themselves.
You've just done that Snapchat beautifully. What was the sliding door moment for you reckon, for probably the Western Jets job and then obviously Scotty Clayton to come to you and say, do you want to be working with the Brisbane Bears, who now are the Lions?
Yeah, probably the selection process of that 1988 team. I know that's going back a long way, but we had to trial a lot of kids to get that final squad of 25 or 30, I think it was. And that gave me a really good view of talent identification, which I loved, on the back of having a phys ed degree. So, human movement, biomechanics, all that sort of stuff all flowed into it. And I just fell in love with that part of it. And I'm lucky enough to have worked in the industry, whatever it is, 35 years or more. But it hasn't really felt like work. It's like you're lucky if you can go to a job that's a passion more than a job, and that's how I viewed it. I've been incredibly lucky.
You've been lucky, but geez, there's got to be times that you've driven out to watch some bloke play and he hasn't got a kick, and you're going, I'm going to drive 3 hours home. There's, the job isn't easy though.
No, but it's a lot more refined now than what it used to be. I remember once way back with Brisbane, it might have even been with Carlton. I drove all the way down to Terang to watch this Victorian Country Championship match. I think the kid's name was Stuart Anderson, played with North Melbourne. He got a corky in the first 10 minutes of the game, didn't come back. He was the only player that I was there to watch. So you come back thinking, well, that was a long drive to watch one player that lasted about 10 minutes. But now you often go to games and there's 6 to 10 players that you're seriously assessing on the day. So, and that's the beauty of this under-18 system that we have in Victoria now, to be honest.
And there would have been no film back then, so it's like your eyes is that's your research all off your eyes and your work rate. But now you can probably sit in your bedroom and just get all these streams and just watch them online, behind the goals, everything.
Yeah, behind goal vision, live stats, GPS data, all this stuff's changed because we had none of that in the old days.
Make your job easier with all the data? Yeah. Not that, obviously you're now transitioning and we'll talk about that at the very end, but I'd imagine it would make it harder. It's more competitive, you know what I mean? Like you shouldn't really stuff up your first pick, is what I'm trying to say.
Yeah.
You get your first 10 picks in the draft.
Yeah.
If you've got pick 4 or pick 3, it's pretty hard to stuff it up, I would have thought.
They normally end up playing, but I was talking to a club this morning, a recruiting guy from one of the clubs got a very early pick, and he's doing his head in, which I understand because when you've got the really early picks, you've got more choices.
Yeah.
And you're umming and ahhing, and I look back on some of the ones that I made and you sort of go, God, if I'd taken the other one, we would have been. But that's the thing of being the recruiting manager. Ultimately, someone has to make a call and call a name. Some work out great and others not as great. But certainly with the data now, like we went through a process this morning looking at our order that Chris Kane and Johnny Giramondo's put together, and the data analytics of it is much more involved than what it's ever been.
When you say that, what is it like? What do you mean by that? Break it down for someone that's really
all the different sort of aspects of a footballer, ball handling, kicking, decision making.
They've all got ratings or something.
Ratings and scores.
And who rates them?
We do. The recruiting department go back and code all these games now because the champion data stats that we get are fairly basic.
I was going to say, they're quite skewed. Like it's like you can see someone could have a big impact on champion data.
Yeah.
But when you watch the game yourself, there's some impact players that don't get a lot of stats, but they do a lot, they make a lot of impact.
Right. Yeah. So they'll do a lot of voluntary or unrewarded running. So you played, the winger, having to up and back, you're playing your role, but you might not get the ball much, but you're playing your role. So with the vision that we've got, we would code that.
Gotcha.
So that his off-ball stuff is really high.
Which is great because these young guys coming through the system would change their mindset on stats. About, when I say stats, I mean possessions, and go, I'm being recruited to play AFL, and if I can have an elite work rate defensively and offensively,
Correct.
and they're going to recognise that, then you'll do it more, won't you? You won't be chasing kicks.
Yeah, and we think that message gets through to the players. We still have a few problems where parents or managers, whatever, will base the kids' potential to get drafted just purely on the stats that they've got, their disposals. That's not the case. It's the efficiency of the stats, but it's also getting an understanding of how the player is being coached. Is he being coached to take on the more difficult kick, or is he turn laterally, hit the easy kick, high efficiency rate with his kicking at 100%?
Yeah, the old back pocket little chip.
But he's not taking the ball forward. You got minimal chance of beating the defence because the defence is loading back. So this coding allows you to do that. It's been an eye-opener, I've got to say, for an old guy like myself, and it's new. But having gone through it today and see how it's all come together, I can appreciate where it's going. And ironically, I reckon it was 4 or 5 years ago, we had a CEO who I love working with, Andrew Ireland, and he said the whole football club, all departments, marketing, membership, football, everybody, if you can't get your mind around using data going forward, you're going to struggle in this industry. And that's pretty much where it's going. So
obviously AI is a big topic of conversation around, any friendship groups and everyone that, even work. If you don't know how to use it, well, you'll be left behind. Is that going to be something that you're talking about that comes into recruiting as well?
I'm sure it will be, and that's one of the reasons I'm getting out, Tommy. Like I struggle with social media far less.
You don't need social media. One thing that stands out for me, I'll give you a little, a little polish here, but it's just when I was going through the TSC Cup as a Calder Cannons, Dion Prestia, great friend of mine, but geez, a great talent, and he was touted top 10. And I asked him before the draft, who's the best bloke in this draft? Like who's the player that you go is a superstar? And he goes, mate, Luke Parker is so good. I remember probably would have been halfway through the TSC Cup season, and come draft night, I remember watching the draft, and Luke Parker never was taken till you'd know the pick, but it was late, and I couldn't believe it. And you watch the output you get out of a player like Luke Parker. And you took him, and it's no surprise. You could see a footballer, and that's the thing. I love to weigh out the data and just go pick the gun. It might not have been the best. I don't know what his testing was, so I'm speaking out of pocket here. But it's funny how I feel like you've done a great job of just taking the footballer if in doubt. Now there's probably more decision makers, and there's a whole team and process and data and AI. We just spoke about it, but you've done a great job of taking the footballer, I feel, and I reckon a lot of list managers probably have stuffed that up and taken the talent and the potential as more of a priority.
Yeah, I mean, being in it as long as I have been, there's certainly been some trends where there was a bit of a shift to take the athlete rather than the footballer, and they would talk about his speed, etc. But one thing I always valued in footy, the thing that had to move fast was the ball. If you can move the ball quickly, you're more chance of being able to break down the defence and score. And that doesn't mean carrying the ball and bouncing. It means being able to make good decisions quickly, accurately, and hitting that target. So that is the footballer. And that's part of the data that we've coded this year to look at those things. The ball use, as much as the athletic requirements the game has. Like you've played it, there are certain physical requirements that you have to have.
Yeah.
And if you can't run, you're really going to struggle.
That's the main one, isn't it? If you can't run,
if you're not coordinated and you can't balance up and recover quickly and stuff like that, then you'll be very lucky to make it. But Parks' situation was interesting because...
What pick did he go just for the record? I'll Google it quickly.
I think it was late 30s or
it was
might have even been 40. But I remember that draft in particular because I was with Stuart Maxfield and Roosie and John Longmire was sitting behind us, and they all had the spreadsheet that we were working
Pick 40 he was.
40.
Number 40, 2010 right. National draft, which everyone said he'd be top 15 minimum.
Yeah. And I remember just turning around to Roosie and John and saying, look, I'm not sure what's happened here, why he slid, but he's too good a player to go past.
And what did they say in that moment?
They said, back yourself in.
And how many
away you
decision
go.
makers in the room? You're the main man there, so it's your
in the
responsibility.
end, and recruiting departments are like that. Like, it's never one person. In fact, the worst decisions I've ever made is when I didn't have a good team around me that challenged. And challenge, I mean, when you sort of, because you can fall in love with a player for various reasons, whether it's their ball use, their personality, great interview, whatever, and you do need people to say, "Are you sure, Tommy?
Yeah.
You sure? Have you considered this?" And that's really important to have it.
And
And
high
it's
challenge, yeah.
yeah, and it's Scotty Clayton always had a great saying in recruiting that it's just as important to be able to say no as yes, and then working out why you're saying no. And we can get to that later. Yeah.
Funny, I remember going through the draft process, and a good mentor of ours, Graham Bergen, he's a good man. He always said recruiters want every chance to not take you, so don't give them a chance. He reckons he was in the industry for a bit, but recruiters can go through everything and they can look at absolutely everything in your life, and from family, whether you got a girlfriend, she doesn't want to move overseas, your school, the way you maybe you've made a mistake at school and one teacher says one bad thing, and they'll go through everything. And he always said, just give them no opportunity to do that before the draft. And it's funny, you just think about it, how they can just pick you apart. And that's why I think when it comes back to it all, you can really overdo it a little bit.
Yeah, I mean, there's a thing in recruiting, recent bias, when that means that players come on the scene late and he's fresh and new. And there's a player in this year's draft, I don't mind saying who it is, Dyson Sharp.
What people he be going?
Well, for mine, he should be going in the top 12, but sounds like he's drifting. Now, this is the kid that won the Kevin Sheen medal for best on ground or best in the under-16 carnival. He's been an All-Australian and under-18 level 2024, 2025. He's captain of South Australia, and they rave about his leadership qualities. Led them to the championship this year, first time in about 18 years or something that South Australia's won it, and played significantly good football for Central Districts at Sandful senior level. And he's sliding, and he's, I reckon, the Luke Parker of this group. He's a big-bodied guy, but he can play.
Why is he sliding?
Because I think recruiters have this silly mentality. When we've seen them so much, you start to look more for what they can't do than what they can do. So the flip side to that is we've got a kid like Sullivan Roby in this draft who's, from what I'm hearing, is going to go relatively early. Sullivan's come on the scene late this year, sort of got mixed up between Dandenong and Eastern Zone, etc. Big-bodied kid, good player. But this is this recency bias that I'm talking about because he's new, fresh, everybody's sort of... And I'm not saying he's not worthy of being selected or that he won't play league footy. I'm sure he will. But I'm looking at all the things that Dyson has done and this kid and you're going, I'm not sure on this. Like, what am I missing? But that's the recruiter's mentality sometimes. We can overlook them. We can over-assess them.
Yeah, overanalyze.
Yeah,
I'm thinking,
especially when they've been come through and they've been really good players at 16.
Well, everything you just named for Sullivan, is the SA guy you're talking about?
No, Sharp's the South Australian. Sullivan Roby's the Eastern Rangers boy.
Sounds like an absolute gem. So I'll be keeping my eyes on that to see where he goes. It's always, this is good insight because this will be coming out. Hopefully we turn this one around, so we'll drop it the day after the draft. So anyone listening,
probably both of them will be called first round. I'll be surprised if they're not. The order of it's going to be fascinating.
Yeah. What pick Sydney got again?
Oh, late 30-something because we traded them out for Big Charlie.
Well, let's stay there. Big Charlie. This is the one thing that you've done well, and I'll go back to you growing up because I've skipped here. We're going to go back to you, the Bears. But, I've always said it's not hard, is it? Like, to my mates, like, get me a spine, get me some good blokes, and get me some workhorses on the outside that have no egos that will, I think of an Atkins at Geelong. Like, get him in there with 2 stars and let him play defensive, but let him play every week. Give me some real hard off-ball, wingers that can play defensive and they can use the ball inside 50. And then you've got stars around the field, but let me start with a big forward, a big back, centre half back. I don't know why clubs overdo it. So you've just gone, Kerno, bring him in, no dramas. We need a key forward, but don't have one. We've had a go at it, but no one stood up. We've had a few injuries. Let's bring him in. We've got the next 6 years with the big fella, and he's going to dominate at the SCG. Yeah. Why do other clubs not do this?
No, I think they do. I mean,
Not really. I could say Collingwood hasn't had a key forward. This is my opinion. Collingwood's an amazing side, but they have not had a key forward since Travis Cloak. A big, powerful key forward, full forward. I'm talking like a Matty Lloyd full forward.
There's not many around, though.
That's my point. So why don't they trade out these early picks? Because some of these early picks, if you go back, I won't name them out because but if you look at some of these stars that are recruited for first rounders and then you count them, you go, I think it was worth it.
Yeah. Look, I don't know why other clubs don't. In fact, I didn't have anything to do with this trade period at all. Chris and his team took over that. I've played much more of a backseat role this year, which I've enjoyed because that period of the year, the trade period, is the most stressful time in footy. I didn't particularly like it at all because you're dealing with people, but also the stress that comes with either trying to get the deal done or avoid a player trying to leave. The Sydney market, they love the key forwards. Goes back to Plugger, Barry Hall, Buddy, and now hopefully Charlie. Yeah, they flock in to watch them. So it's important for us, but it's also important for the team to have a key forward to kick to. Yeah.
It's an amazing facility as well. So it would be an easy sell and it's a great place to live. We'll go back to that because you just spoke about you oversee this year. What do you mean when you say that for everyone out there? Obviously, you're transitioning into a new role next year. But when you say you oversee it all, what's the difference between this year and the previous years for you?
Yeah. Well, it's an interesting topic because everybody talks about, whether it's me in the past or a Stephen Wells or a Blair Hartley, etc., it sort of comes across like they're the only person that works in the recruiting department, and it's far from that. Most of the time, whether it's a trade, free agency, pre-season pick, national draft rookie, there is a team of people behind that and a network of people that will help make the decisions or be the contact to be able to get that person on the hook, especially if it's a trade. And that might be a coach, it might be another administrator. I mean, when I was working early on with Sydney, Andrew Ireland was brilliant at it, both at Brisbane and at Sydney, working with the player managers. John was very good at it, and the coach, and with when we got Joshy Kenny and Ben McGlynn from Hawthorn 209, Georgie Stone was an assistant coach, but he was the link between the Kennedy family and us really getting some traction in that stage. So it's very rarely just the list manager or the recruiting manager, even though they seem to get all the praise and the kudos. It's far from that.
You need that connector that's got that deep kind of relationship to then give you the opportunity.
Yeah, you need some link there to be able to get it. And a good recruiting team will park their egos and use everybody's contacts and expertise to get the players in.
What was the link to Buddy Franklin?
Jacinta.
Really?
Wanting to get to Sydney. Yeah, for her career, and he wanted to go with her. The link there was Liam Pickering and John Longmire, because Pickers was also manager of John, and then Andrew Ireland. So that was the main link there. Yeah.
There you go. And then that's when the conversation starts.
Yeah, and that I mean, in all my time at footy, that's probably the acquisition of player that I'm most proud of as a club, to be able to have that in place for well over 6 months and to be able to hold it quiet and internal, because, I think you were still at the Giants.
Yeah, no,
They thought he was going there, so did the AFL. So
everyone said he's going to the Giants, and then out of nowhere, the Swans have signed Buddy. So you're saying how many people involved in that deal, in that trade?
About 6 it.
Yeah, so 6 people, high trust, no one said a word for 6 months.
Yeah.
That's a good club, good culture.
And to all credit to Bud too, I don't think he told his closest mates in Jordan Lewis and Jordan, Ruffy, Jared, that he was going. He held it tight as well. So it was, I look back at it, and most of the time leaks get out about a trade, or it's even out of control now with player managers, etc. But to be able to do that deal, I thought was just phenomenal, and full credit to the club and everybody that did know. Yeah.
It was also a big deal.
Massive deal.
Does that stress you out? Did it stress you out, the size of the deal? And if you can, what was the deal again for them?
Dean Moore was the GM of footy then. So what stressed us out? Because we'd only done Kurt Tippett the year before, so the salary cap was the issue. Getting that done and moving of players and stuff like that, that was always going to be the challenge. But yeah, you find a way of being able to get that done, whether you're pushing contracts back or extension of years, etc. You find a way to get it done. But at the time, I remember when Dean and I were first told, brought into the loop of what was happening, we sort of, oh yeah, how are we going to do this type thing?
Back-ended.
Yeah.
It would mean that you have to let other players go, I'd imagine. Yep. And I can't remember what happened, but were there players that just had to go?
Yeah, there would have been players that had to go.
Yeah.
And I forget who was in that then. It might have been Hannah's and someone like that. And that's the unfortunate part. Like we talked before about Charlie Curnow coming in. Well, Will Hayward and Ollie Laurent have had to go as a result to be able to, one, get the draft capital to fulfil the requirements of Carlton, and probably some TPP issues to allow that to occur. So, and that's the hard part when you're dealing with people.
And they're good fellas as well. Like
great fellas.
And
great
fellas. Been there for, not 9, was it 9?
Yeah,
they've
both
a long time.
played just over 180 games, so and they're good mates.
Was that important for you guys to send them together so that at least they got something, or was that just unfolded because Carlton requested it?
Probably Carlton just requested it the way, because Ollie wasn't part of that deal. He'd been traded beforehand in another deal, and then Will was in the deal with the first round selections for this year and next year. But yeah, that's the difficult part of it. Yeah, the trade. Yeah.
You get some, you got to lose. You lose it. I think you always lose more in terms of the quantity. You got to lose. If you get Buddy in, that's one player, but you're probably losing 3 or 4 to open up the space for the great men.
And at times when you've got a really strong list too, you'll lose young players that you've been nurturing, and they go on to other clubs. Like I think it was this year we had 2 or 3 that won club best and fairest at other clubs that only played a few games with us. So Darcy Cameron, we took him as a young ruckman to develop. And what happens if you've got 2 or 3? Either they or their manager become impatient. There's an opportunity. They don't want to play, and I get that. But from a list management perspective, that's really frustrating. So there was him, and then Dorso left to go back to Adelaide. He's now club captain and BNF, and Toby Nankervis played just a handful of game for us before he took off to Richmond. Now he's captain there. So you make those calls thinking that they're going to be good players and help you, but that's just the industry.
Well, you made the right call, though, at least. You must look back and go, I'm pretty proud of me work. They've all gone on and obviously not at the club that you want them to stay, but they can't all stay there if they're stashed.
As a recruiting department, you take pride in that. Sure. Yeah.
We'll go back to the Jordan Dawson scenario and all the things that happened there and the loophole and the one that might be there this year with Archie. But let's go back to you. Brisbane Bears.
Yep.
Anyone out there that loves their football will know they then turn into the Lions and they become the most successful side I've ever seen in my time. I was born in 93, and what they did, it's crazy. And not only that, just what they've been able to do post-football. A lot of them have gone on and been very successful in coaching and whatnot. But your involvement in putting that list together, and there's one draft that stands out that I'd love you to talk about.
1997 draft. So we took Lukey Power at 6, Shane O'Brien at 10. He went on to Collingwood. Blackie at 31, and then Marcus Picken and Bo McDonald. So, but between the 3 mids that we took, they played over 1,000 games of AFL footy, which is a pretty good strike rate for that. But yeah, the Brisbane Lions, they were an incredible team. Tough, skilled, ruthless, resilient, and then at the time, Leigh was the perfect coach for them because it took someone with a massive aura to be able to come in and keep these, because they're pretty egotistical young blokes at the time, Lepper and the Scots and all these guys, Vossi, etc. Someone that could just convince them this is the style of play that you had to play to win finals. And Leigh's record as a player and coach, having coached Collingwood to a flag, was just the perfect appointment for them. And the history's there to read now. They were an unbelievable team.
So skilled as well. Like, you're talking about courageous, tough. but their skill was through the roof. Even now, like I'm thinking of Jason Akanis, one of the most skillful players I remember watching, and Blackie, and I mean Powell, like all of them. There's so many you could go through.
Nigel Lappin.
There's heaps. I mean, Chris Johnson, he's a good family friend. Like he's tough as nails, but geez, how good's his leg? Like to be tough and a real skillful player. Then I feel like I feel like a lot of blokes I play with, the tough ones were horrific kicks.
Yeah.
Not tough. I mean, like your hard back pocket. Like it's very rare that you can get the. I think of someone like a Lee Spur who I played with. He was very skillful and courageous, but there wasn't a lot stands out. But in that Brisbane side, I felt like they all were.
Well, Chrissy, as a kid, in his 18th year, he played at the Northern Knights. He kicked 7 in a grand final. Crazy. At the MCG off a half-forward flank, 7 goals. So he started off there at Fitzroy as a sort of a forward flanker, and evolved into one of the most punishing small backs the game's seen in a long period of time. But someone like Martin Pike, like Pikey could literally play on any line. Seriously, like he could play key defence, wing, midfield, centre half forward, full forward if you needed to. And that was Leigh's call when I'm talking about teams making calls and acquiring players. Leigh put his hand up because Pikey had been given the raspberry from North Melbourne. And Leigh said, no, I want him and I'll take ownership of it. And, Pikey played in all 3 premierships and great selection. Yeah.
And when a coach does that, you just go, no worries, like you're the head coach.
Yeah.
Or is there a bit of challenge?
In which way?
When he says, I'm going to bring this bloke into the side, he's just been given the raspberry. Does that interfere with your process back then or not really? You're all just going, yep, that's fine.
No, well, I think one of the things when you're working in recruiting is to have a good, strong relationship with your head coach and your coaches to understand how they want the game to be played and just accept the fact that these guys are very experienced footy people. They've seen a lot of football either as a player or as a coach or as an administrator, and they have a fair idea of what's required to put together a good team. So it's working with them because one of the faults I've seen recruiters make sometime is when they try to keep the information away from their coaches asset leading into a draft, which to me I always laugh because I thought all you're really doing is setting yourself up for a fall. Because invariably, a month or 2 months in, the coaches are going, what do we draft this kid for?
Yeah.
You can't do this, you can't do that, because you haven't brought them into the picture.
Yeah.
And once they've bought into the picture, well, everybody's on the same page and away you go. I mean, you've lived and breathed AFL and you know if you don't have the whole football department singing to the same hymn book, you've got no chance.
Yeah.
You might win some games, but you've got no chance of winning.
I think that the same page is so important with anything. Like if you're not on the same page in anything you do, it's just there's dramas everywhere. It's what do you mean we're not doing this? I thought we're doing that. So there's just too much grey area. But if you're on the same page, it's staggering that recruiters would hide information from head coaches.
I've seen it. And like I was lucky I had a really great working relationship with John and we would talk virtually weekly about recruiting and he loved it.
Obviously.
Of course. Yeah, he just loved it.
Well, it's important as well because if he loves what you're doing, my coach Ross Lyon, I don't think he spoke to me for 2 months when I got there. I don't think he gives a stuff about first round pick. And you shouldn't care where they go, but there's different philosophies. But I'd imagine if you love from the day one, they love the selection. You know, you walk in, you might get a little bit more out of the young kid as an 18-year-old at the start, and that's where
any work environment, isn't it?
Yeah.
If you feel valued. Your confidence is up and you're not worried about making a mistake.
Yeah, there's old school and there's new school. But when you see the same page, obviously it would lean to more success. How has your success rate gone? If you look back over all the years, we'll come back to the Bears in a second, Lions and Blackie in that draft because I don't know how he slid to that 31 or whatever you said. But your success rate with your first round picks, I just thought off the top of my head, how have you gone?
I reckon I've had greater success with back end and rookies than top end, maybe because of early or so many options early.
Yep.
And I don't want to go into names because some of the players are still playing.
Yep.
But I know at times it was out of 2 players. A couple of times called the other player, and you look back and think, I wish I would have called the other player. But you have to make a decision and call a name, and you live and die by it. Biggest mistakes I made early on with early picks was not doing enough background work in terms of their character and attitude, because they could be any player. He could have all the athleticism required to play the game and great skill and game IQ, footy IQ, etc. But if he hasn't got the dedication and the work ethic and the grunt to do the work, he won't make it. He might scramble together 50-odd games, but he's not going to fulfil the potential that you thought he would have, because it's just too demanding, Tommy. And the footy public, I don't think, understand what goes on behind the scenes for an AFL player to get there, and the training that goes into it and the disciplines required with their diet, rehab, sleep. A lot of those things are all monitored all the time. So the rewards are there, absolutely. But for some, it's just too hard in terms of the disciplines required.
Film, meetings, talk about getting out of your comfort zone, addressing a group of 60 men, high challenge, all this stuff at 18 years old.
Yeah.
You're right. If you haven't done that, then it could unfold. Let me ask you a question then. If you could have your time again, you'd go and learn a little bit more about their character and whatnot. How would you do that?
Well, the lesson I learned from that was, as a recruiting person, don't think you're going to be the smartest person in the room, and don't try to be too cute. I, a couple of times, didn't ring schools, etc., about players because I didn't want it out that we were seriously interested in it.
Gotcha.
Now, that's a mistake, because you've got your relationship with those schools, teachers, etc., you've got to back it in that they'll remain confidential about the conversation, as we would with them. But to not do that, that's something in the last decade that I've valued a lot more than what I did in the early days.
Yep.
Is the character and doing the research into that spot. Yeah.
Any other ways of working it out? Because I feel like schools wouldn't have had a clue what I was like.
Yeah.
In terms of the way I train and my desire for football.
The people that deal with them on a day-to-day basis, so they're junior coaches, team managers. Like, quite often I'll go to team managers I know that work in the under-18 system or during the national under-18s and say, any skunks in the group?
Yep.
And they won't always just say, yeah, he's no good, but they'll probably say something like, probably want to dig a bit deeper there, Kinnear.
Yeah.
Which is that's the precursor to,
there's one, go find it.
There's something here that we need to explore more. Yeah.
What about the other way around? Do you frame it like, who's the best bloke in the group? Who's the bloke that gets the group together? Who's the guy that makes them all? Is there any of those questions as well?
I think that's still the art of list management, in terms of you've got to have that right blend in the locker room. You've got to have some guys that are really strong leaders, natural leaders, and other players that are prepared to just adopt a team-first mentality and play their role. And that's, again, part of the art of recruiting in the attitude, character, home visits, people to talk to about how driven they are and what they're going to offer to the group. And Brisbane was very good at that. We had a psych up there, and we knew which of the players were enforcers, really strong, domineering types, and the others that were what would you call them? More the
passive.
Yeah, the passive guys that before a game they just wanted to sit and concentrate on their role. They didn't want to be bouncing around the rooms, yelling and screaming. But again, the beauty about this psych that we worked with Leigh was Leigh accepted the fact that they're different, so I have to take that on as a coach and allow them to be themselves, because it's going to diffuse a lot of the stress that's building up, and I don't want stressed players. Yeah,
that's good coaching, because you can't mould everyone into the same.
No, God, no, and you don't want them to be.
I was just thinking about that. We did a disc profile on all of the players. Can't remember what the I was, but it was like D was dominant, S was supportive, C was care, and then I was like, I know what the characteristics were, but it was like high energy, and I sat in there, but so did everyone that I was really close with. But then what it did was it showed all these people, but we did this test and it showed you who you were as a, when you did your disc profile at the club, but then away. And there's a couple of frauds in my eyes. When I say frauds, but they would be players that are the high dominant in the club, but the complete opposite at home.
Okay.
And then they broke it down and why. And then they'd go, well, my role as a leader is to high challenge, high accountability. I've got, if I'm in this leadership group, I've got to deliver these standards week by week. And if I don't, then I should be pulled out of this, all that kind of stuff. And I remember that meeting being quite interesting.
Well, it is. And as a teammate, it allows you to function better with that player.
Yeah, you understand
because you understand them.
Yeah.
So you're not expecting them to react in a certain way or their behaviours to change if their personality profile's suggesting, no, that's not them, mate. Some players are mozzies was another term that we have. So they're mozzie, they're quite impulsive and they're very adaptable. So they don't really care if the runner comes out and says, Tommy Bean, we need you to go and play this role now.
Yeah.
Okay, whereas a thinker-feeler, if he'd set himself on playing this role, he'd be going, what have I done wrong?
Yeah.
Why am I being asked to change my role?
Yeah.
So he's worried about it. The mozzie's going, yeah, no worries, boss.
Yeah.
Away we go.
And that's
so it's understanding how the message has to be delivered.
Yeah,
It's subtle.
It's very subtle, but it's so important because game day, if you're like, it can rattle. We always spoke about you need all 18 on the field, otherwise you lose one, you get smashed. So it only takes one, really.
Well, having seen how successful it can be in a footy club, I can't understand why more businesses don't do it.
I was just thinking that.
They should do it.
We're talking about it's called disc profiling. I think you can Google it if you're out there. Have a look at it. You can incorporate it yourself. Do it with your missus if you so you understand each other a bit better. But you're right. Businesses should do it, and because we are so different, and you'll be able to work that out yourself. But having it, with data to back it up, you go, oh, no wonder when I challenge that person, they fold. They don't like the way I do that. They prefer me to deliver the feedback this way, or vice versa. Just give it to me straight. That's what it does. It allows you to kind of understand how everyone kind of likes to operate better.
If you're running a business of 20 or more people, you should be doing it. I reckon the investment is well worth it in terms of getting your team to function at its best because they'll understand each other. It takes out a lot of the stress of it, a lot of the arguments, all the pettiness. They've got a better understanding. Yeah.
We go back to the Bears, Lions. What was the most rewarding part of your time there? I just think about if I was a club right now and I'm struggling, we all know the ones that have done so for a long time. They recruit some great talent and then they just don't get the reward on the the win-loss. But you've been able to do that at multiple clubs. It must be so rewarding to then put this list together and then obviously watch it unfold the way it has for you. What was the most rewarding part at the Lions and the Bears? 2000 granny, would that be?
Yeah, that was probably it because Essendon was seen as this unbeatable team.
I'm an Essendon fan growing up, so it was heartbreaking this day.
Yeah, and I remember that game because I get on really well with Adrian Dodoro, who was the list manager. I remember talking to him about that game afterwards a few years later, and he said, I remember he was down on the bench, and he said, I remember looking across. It was a really hot day and looking and seeing Tim Notting still there and hadn't been on the ground. And his words were, unless he's injured and he's fresh in the second half, we've got problems trying to match his run. And that was one of the things that came off that day. It was just the excitement of watching that team play, to be honest. Like they were just awesome. Awesome. The self-belief in it, yeah. And I've done little exercises where I've looked at the teams from Sydney, and this isn't talking down the Sydney teams, but I struggle at times to find a winner in Sydney against who the opponent would be from Brisbane in the same position. Well, they just had stars everywhere, like Mal Michael at full back, key forwards in Lynch, Bradshaw and Brown. Like, which team in the AFL now has got three key forwards like that? People forget Brady kicked just on 600 goals.
Yeah, underappreciated from the public, I reckon.
Yeah.
And not to mention Ackermanis, Power.
Oh, man,
that year is...
Sean Hart, one of the strongest defensive runners that allowed Acker and a few others to play more attacking brands of footy. Sean and Nigel were unbelievably strong gut runners. And Leigh often talked about that as a measurement of courage.
I'll put you on the spot. You have to pick the national drafts tomorrow, and you can pick 3 players in their prime from that team. Who's 1, 2, and 3?
Voss.
Voss 1?
Yeah. Yeah, just for like Vossi could also play out of the goal square as a leading forward and be very menacing. Probably then Blackie, just for his pure silk and ball use. And then third for mine would probably be Brownie.
There you go.
Because he was just so intimidating. And I've heard blokes like Luke Power and them say, when I knew Brownie was in the forward line, I walked a bit taller.
Yeah.
Because he was just, I don't know whether they'd get away with it now. Especially with the mics out there, some of the things they said to the opposition players, they used to terrorise them.
I can imagine if you're playing, I don't think they had many spares back in the day, but if you sat in the hole in front of Brownie, he would have said some funny stuff.
Yeah, and then, other enforcers like Chrissy Scott and Lepper, and they were just everywhere, to be honest.
Are you quite proud of them all going on? I mean, a lot of them are coaching now and winning flags. You must be pretty proud of the work there?
Yeah, I think Leigh would be more than anybody that he's had that or certainly had his thumbprint on them about them becoming coaches. But, there's a lot that are in footy.
Did you think they were going to do that when they were in footy? Like when you're around this group, could you see, obviously, Vossi being a very strong skipper and leader, that's it's an easy one. But the back pockets, they always do well, the back pockets, don't they?
Yeah, well, the Scott boys are both very smart young men, or were then. So they're even smarter now. But that doesn't surprise me.
Yep.
Because they were really, really, sharp young men. Fly, that surprised me a bit that Craig went on to become a coach and a successful coach that he is.
Why is that?
He's a bit of a mozzie in his own way. And
he was more like the Mad Monday organiser, I heard. Like, he's a bit of a lad.
A little bit like that. But
which is great.
He also had to transform his game. I think Craig would mind me saying he wasn't the hardest player at the start over the ball, but Leigh was able to convince him that, if you're going to become an AFL premiership player, you've got to get better at that area and work hard at it, and he did. And I think he played in all 3 premierships fly. So he's got a good appreciation of having to work really strongly in an area of your game that doesn't come naturally to you, but being able to accept the challenge and then work on it and get better at it.
Which is quite powerful for a young kid coming through going, we used to call lane 8, which is where we love to live outside, bruise free. And it's like, but you've got to go when it's your time, your turn. And if you can put your hand up and say, I learnt the hard way as well, that's pretty powerful from a coach to a player.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah.
I was just thinking that's a big, the top 3. I mean, it'd be a tough exercise doing that. I appreciate you doing that.
That's being unfair to blokes like Nigel Lappin and Lepper and multiple others, but they'd be the 3 for mine.
Just had a question come through my brain. Who's a coach who's a player that's playing now that you can definitely see being a great coach in the future? We'll watch this podcast in 10 years and they'll go on coach of premiership side, like the Scott brothers have, McRae. Hopefully Voss does one day. But who's a player that you have recruited or you've been around, maybe more so at the Swans, that you can easily see going on to be an AFL head coach in the future?
Well, the one that I keep hearing now at Sydney that they say has one of the best footy brains and can come off the ground when he's been rotated and be able to tell the coaches what's going on out there is Errol Goulden.
I was just about to say Goulden.
Yeah, he's got an amazing ability to be able to understand what the hell's going on and where the game is at. So if he's got the man management skills and the inclination to go down that track, Errol would probably be one. Yeah, left field one, Brodie might be able to.
Yep, Grundy.
Yeah, because he's such a lateral thinker. Brodie, he thinks out of the square a lot, so he's always looking at a challenge and be better. And that might seem like a strange one, but it wouldn't shock me. Yeah.
Big man as well, bit of presence, a bit of aura in the they love a bit of aura, they say.
So
there you go.
But Fly hasn't got size on his side. Hasn't stopped him.
No, it hasn't at all.
Hasn't stopped Chris Fagan.
No, at all. He's done an amazing job.
Unbelievable. Yeah.
That's very good. Then let's talk about your time from Brisbane, how did that, where did you go next in your life? You've done such a great job there. And for anyone out there that's doing anything with themselves, it's always hard leaving and then doing something new, whether you're in the same industry or not. So talk to me about that part of your life and the opportunities that popped up and the decision at hand.
Yeah. Funny how life pans out a lot, because I didn't initially move to Sydney by choice. Brisbane didn't renew my contract at the end of 2005. Gubby Allen informed me that the club wasn't going to go on with me anymore, which at the time I was really disappointed in, because there'd been no heads up about that. There'd been no performance review about it, nothing like that. But when I reflect now, it was a good thing for me, because when you've been at a club, and I'd been there for around the 10 years, just over 11 years, you can get a bit stuck in your ways and not looking out of the square enough and being challenged, unless you change over your staff a lot, which is why I think a lot head coaches change their assistant coaches around a fair bit to bring in fresh ideas. So in 2006, I worked for Adelaide as a consultant with Johnny Reid and James Fantasia, which was good to work with a different club and see how they did it. But then about 2/3 of the way through the year, Andrew Ireland, who was head of footy at the Sydney Swans and had been my CEO at Brisbane, he'd approached me once before and I said, no, I'm staying at Brisbane. He said, look, will you consider coming to the Swans? And I said, absolutely. So I left. I told Adelaide just prior to the draft that I wasn't going to be there the following year, and it was up to them whether they wanted me involved in that draft or the pre-season. So we cut ties straight after the draft, and I started with Brisbane the pre-season draft.
Sydney, you mean? Sorry.
Sydney, yeah. Sorry. Started with Sydney the pre-season draft, which the first selection was Nick Smith, which turned out pretty good. And I've been there since.
Amazing.
And I learnt a lot from working with Brucey and John, because I was just completely different to Leigh in terms of their interest in the draft and development and stuff. They're just different eras that they came from.
You've worked with some of the best. Like you look back and go, geez, the names you're rolling off here and what they've done collectively in football. You've got an apprenticeship like no other.
Started back in Carlton, to be honest. Like when at Carlton, Ross Henshaw was the coach, so a premiership player, but the staff was Ian Collins, CEO, Stephen Goff, general manager of footy, Jeff Walsh, recruiting manager. That was the group I worked with. That's a pretty good lead-in for a young bloke fresh into AFL footy to work under those guys. We still work with Colo of a Thursday morning. And so his memory for the game is crazy.
Yeah, some people just love it.
Yeah.
I'm just thinking about, we'll go to Sydney in a sec, but you just mentioned you got Brucey, you've got Horse, and then you've also got Leigh.
Yeah.
You spoke about how they're all different and how you learnt a lot. Well, what would be one thing that you learnt the most from each of them, so I can understand the difference between the three?
Leigh, there was an incident that had happened very early on with Leigh, and it probably summed him up. I thought the players had this full-day seminar thing at a sponsor's place in an auditorium, and they'd been going through a whole lot of different things as you do, like diet, nutrition, injury prevention, etc., a bit of game plan. We got to lunch and the boys were just about cooked, so they needed a break. One of them found one of those cardboard cylinders, and I think it was Timmy Notting or someone like that had brought one of those rubber balls that you throw around for a dog to chase because they bounce around. Anyway, they started playing cricket with this thing. And I remember this really clearly. Chris Scott was batting and someone threw the ball and Chris just flicked it off his leg and this thing bounced around the room. The split second Leigh walked in and the room's just gone dead quiet. And Leigh's looked at Scotty and said, Chris, would you do that in your mother's lounge room? And Chris, being Chris, said, yes. But then looked at Leigh and said, but that's not the point, is it? And Leigh said, no, it's not. it's about respect. And until we get respect for everything about this footy club, staff, your players, your facilities, we won't go anywhere. And it was just this moment where the Lion King tackled the young buck coming up and just put him into place. And, it was just a sign that Leigh had this aura about him. I've never dealt with anybody that goes close to him. When Leigh gives you this look, you just sort of, oh, God, I'm in trouble here type thing. So he was so strong at being able to get the players to buy into the game plan that he knew would be successful, and you can't argue with his success rate. Not a lot of deviation to how the game was played, really. Game plans, etc. Leigh's more, his philosophy was more, if I can get them to play at their best, then it's going to take a really good team to beat us, because he knew it was a good team. Roosie was different in terms of the tactics and that sort of stuff, and John is more relationships and having really strong connections with his players and a strong game plan as well, and being able to sell that. But that's the thing I've noticed with all three of them premiership coaches, and I worked with Wolsey too for a short while, was their ability to be able to sell a game plan and be uncompromising in that. Because the moment the players see that you're compromising or you're changing and it's gone from black and white to grey, you're in trouble.
Yeah.
Yeah, because the players then go, oh, hang on.
You
not
said
sure
that
on
at the
this.
start. They're very smart, the players.
Yeah. Well, they are. They know footy.
Yeah, you're right. I can
so it
visualise
takes these really strong personalities. I mean, I'd love to work with Chris Fagan to work out how he gets it done.
Looks like an amazing person from the outside looking
clearly,
in. And I hear,
clearly.
you hear. I mean, I think I've heard this, and I hope it's no Mayo, but I'm pretty sure he calls every number. During the week, I've heard that he touches base with every single player, and you just don't hear that, and I don't know why. Because I think about all my coaches growing up. You spoke about junior coaches. Mel Tobin, Dizzy Lynch, some of the guys that from Riddles Creek that you might know, that they had such a great impact on my life. And the way they coached me was I think they were just great people, and they'd communicate a lot, and they were very honest. So if you weren't getting a kick or maybe you weren't going hard enough, it was straight down the line and you'd respond. But when you get to AFL level, it's amazing how you do not communicate much with the head coach. And I speak on behalf of a lot of people. The coach doesn't communicate with their players because they've got a lot of meetings and they've got a lot of other things they do. But every player on the list, if you're not in that leadership group, and if you're a fringe player, there's a lot of you hardly have a relationship in terms of a proper one, like the one where it's performance review versus like sit down, how you going, and I guess it's the lay of the land now. But I reckon a lot of players do appreciate the conversation, whether it's 5 minutes once a week. Yeah, apparently Fagan does that, and there's no wonder that he's done such a great job with that.
John
list.
was very big on it. Yeah.
What was the tactics that Roosie implemented at the time that you hadn't seen?
Oh, defence base. Yeah, and thus, the 2005, 2006 grand finals were really low scores, high pressure games, tackle count, numbers around the ball, hard to shift the ball for the opposition. That was more his style.
How many times have you watched the Leo Barry mark?
Well, it's funny when I look at it, I think it's Ty Kennelly. He's got one of the West Coast Eagles blokes in a headlock, so it could have easily been called for that. It's funny how the rules change.
Have you seen Damon Buchanan? Monty was a coach of mine at the Giants. But have you seen him in that? Have you seen the footage of him?
Yeah. He
goes back. He just goes back and just runs into the back. It's unbelievable.
Yeah. But if you have a look at that, I reckon it's Ty got someone in a headlock.
So it's a free kick against you.
Yeah, it should be. Games are won and lost on them.
Yeah, I skipped over, but I heard there was a draft story back to the Bears. Wasn't there? There's a few. I mean, we spoke about. I was actually with Adam Tomlinson and Dom Tyson on the weekend, some great fellas that I went through the draft process with, and we were having a laugh about the draft combine and the interviews, and we all had these ridiculous questions, or someone had we all had some funny moments. I think there was one from the Lions days, wasn't there? You would have seen a few in your time.
Yeah, well, Choco Williams, Mark, he was always notorious. He had players on edge about what he was going to ask them.
He had one that actually someone said that he goes, "Would you run through this wall?"
Yeah.
if you're going to get drafted tomorrow. And I think he goes, would you jump out the window or something? And I think the players are going, well, I don't think they knew what to say because stuff like that would pop up and the boys are going, imagine you jumped out one day just for a laugh.
We hear crazy stories sometimes of recruiters saying to players, count backwards from 74. And you're sort of like, what's the point?
What is the point of that?
I don't know. I mean, I don't know what the point of it is. Quite often what we would do in interviews, you've been through the draft combine and they're long days for a lot of these kids. They start sort of around the 9 o'clock in the morning and sometimes you're finished at 8. You might have 12 interviews over 2 days that go for about half an hour each and they're exhausting. So one of the things I realised about halfway through my career was you had to try to work out where the kid's mind was at. You know, was he exhausted? Was he highly stressed? Whatever. And if you could get a bit of a feel for where they were at, then start off a question like that. So I remember asking a player once, and he was really battling, and I thought, we're going nowhere here. And I thought, okay, what's the stupidest thing you've ever done in your life? And the kid thought about it for a while. And he said, borrow my old man's ute and run the emus into the fence. He was some country kid. But then the interview changed a bit.
Relax.
So try to relax them a little
The
bit.
icebreaker. I like to call it the icebreaker.
The icebreaker, because they're incredibly stressed. So, but try to know them before you get there as well. Have some sort of relationship with them before you go into those interviews and just take that as it's only a snippet, that bit. It's part of the jigsaw puzzle. You're kidding yourself if you reckon you can sum someone up accurately in 15 minutes. And also having a clear understanding what the hell's going on in their life. Like their parents might be going through a divorce. Plenty of kids that I've interviewed over the course. There's some serious stuff going on in the background with mum having breast cancer or there's a brain cancer or someone's had a stroke. And so it's really important to be able to know what that player is going through and what the expectations are on them. Even from a scholastic point of view, academic point of view, this is around their exam time. Just trying to understand all that stuff I think is really important.
It's really well said.
Yeah.
And another thing, I think needs to be feedback to clubs, but I remember going through the draft combine years ago, and I remember some clubs had 3 or 4 blokes to just sit down, relax, and then there's some with 15 people looking at you. And I don't know about you, but whenever you got 15 or 10 people in front of you that are, grown men, women, and some that you've looked up to that are, key figures that, you might have just met, it's like, that's my idol or that's a guy I've got a footy card of.
Yeah.
And they're asking you, you're naturally very nervous. So when you've got more people in the room, I feel like you're going to make I was someone that didn't mind to chat, but I'd imagine it's very intimidating.
Yeah.
I reckon that's one
of
for
them
clubs.
have cameras and things like that in the room, filming everything, and it's like an interrogation rather than a quick interview.
If you want to get more out of it, I reckon you just get your key people in there. Some used to hide people. I found out they hide the coaches around the corner at Marvel. You know,
yes, they did too.
They'd hide them around the corner.
Yeah, well, some of the environments that we used to have weren't really suitable for that level of interviews that we had. One of my favourite funny stories from the draft combines was because we drafted Beau McDonald.
Yeah.
And I remember asking Beau, how'd you find the draft combine and all that? And he said, it was really funny situation occurred. So a club wanted to interview, or a senior coach wanted to interview a kid from the Western Jets called David Antonovich.
Yeah.
So difficult name to pronounce, far less spell. So they sent one of the local scouts from this club to go and get the player. He brought back Beau McDonald.
The wrong Beau.
By mistake. So the coach, thinking that he's talking to David Antonovich, Beau's, you've got to understand, is 204 centimetres, string bean at the time. The coach has asked him, so tell me, how do you pronounce your surname? And Big Beau's leant down and gone, MacDonald. thinking to himself, my God, how thick are these coaches? So
I don't want to go to this club, Mum.
Yeah, when I heard that story, I cracked up because I'm not prepared to say who the coach was, but
we'll keep your relationships intact.
He would have hated it, the coach.
Is he still going now?
No.
Years ago.
No.
You would have heard some funny ones, wouldn't you? I remember at our draft combine, I'm happy to name him, I don't care, Beats, but it was the Gold Coast Suns. and everyone was on edge because they made you tell a joke or you had to read the form guide.
Yeah.
And you had to just read out, say it was race 6 of whatever was in the back of the form guide, and you had to call the race.
Yeah.
And so you think about us young blokes. I mean, I think I'm only 17 at this age. We're at the back practicing race calls.
Yeah.
Going, well, if they ask us, I'm going to call a great race call, or you got a joke. And we all had one joke up our sleeve. And some blokes, like I think, would go in and they prepared for the joke or the race call, and some didn't get asked, so they'd be a bit flat, or some would. But
Yeah.
that was one that stood out from memory. That was a strange one.
Yeah. Well, expanding on the bit of trying to work out where their mindset's at prior to the interview, we had this lady work with us at Sydney, neuroscience sort of background. I found her really, really interesting. She did some great work with John. But I asked her, how can we very quickly ascertain where their mindset's at before the interview starts? So she turned up at the draft with 4 items on the table. One was the Rubik's Cube.
Yep.
Another one was a stress ball. And then there was a wrist slapper.
Yep.
And now I forget what the 4th item was, but they all told you where they were at. So if they went to the Rubik's Cube, they were in sort of a
Good mindset.
yeah, good mindset,
Creative.
quite analytical, ready to go down that track. If they reached for the squeeze ball, stressed, out of their mind.
Yeah.
If they went for the wrist slapper, they're in a playful, happy, relaxed mood. And I wish I could remember what the 4th one was, but I can't. But say a kid like Cody Waitman,
Yep.
he went straight to the wrist slapper.
Yeah, relax, free. Yeah.
And that's him.
Yeah.
He's just this relaxed. And for the whole interview, he just sat there slapping this thing around his lip. But I found it really interesting that in 20 seconds, you could get a bit of a glimpse as to where is this kid at. And if they went for the stress ball and they couldn't let it down, like, okay, let's not press too hard on this kid because he's already under stress. So
yeah, I haven't heard that. That's a really cool story, and it'd be funny. It'd be good to chat to Waven over that one and say, what were you thinking? He's probably thinking nothing, but you've actually already worked him out.
yeah, a little bit. Yeah. So then you can temper your.
Yeah.
But we tried it one year where we had really structured questions for the draft.
Yeah.
And the thing just didn't flow at all. I thought it was a complete failure, that draft.
It's like a podcast, mate. I've got all these prep done. When you interview someone, I've found if I have my notes, there's no flow. Like you'll say, I remember interviewing Shaq just recently, and I had a time limit. It was like 28 minutes or 30 minutes I had. But I had all these things I wanted to ask him, and he'd say something, and I wouldn't even respond because I'm thinking about the next one, and you just don't have any Like I felt like to get all the questions out, great work, but there was you couldn't sit and just flow naturally. Yeah. Otherwise, your 30-minute interview would have 5 questions. So I know exactly what you're talking about. I tend to try not to
flow. And then pick up on where it's travelling because that invariably will take you to some important places.
You get something new. You might not ask something, but you get follow up. I mean, most clubs follow up with a chat.
100%.
Let's get back to footy. Swans. There's some big players you've recruited. We've already touched on the Buddy Franklin one, but you did a fair bit of work there. You put together a premiership side.
Yeah, you're probably referring to the 212 premiership. That was really interesting because I started, so it was, my 3rd year full on, and we weren't a very good kicking team at all. Like it was coming off the back of 205, 206, hard as nails, tough team, but the game was changing. You had to be able to move and shift the ball quickly, and we were a very static team, defenders kicking across goal, couldn't get it forward, couldn't score. And we did a list demographics chart, and it came up, showed a couple of glaring holes in the list. And one was we were, and we're going to be for a period of time, unless we did something about it through the trade period, really poor in the age group of 25 to 21. The club had missed quite a few drafts and there was just this big black hole there. So the focus in that draft was we've got to go after players in this age bracket and in specific positions. So we needed a ruckman. But from that came Josh Kennedy and Ben McGlynn from Hawthorn. That was the Georgie Stone connection. We got Shane Mumford out of Geelong because they had 3 ruckmen, all with the same player management company.
Oh, no, that's handy.
all coming out of contract. So one of them had to go, and Mummy was the obvious one for us. The other ruckmen were Mark Blake and might have been Ottens or someone like that. But so we got Mummy, and then we got Mark Seaby as well as a backup, and then a good draft in 206 with Louis Jetta and Rowan. And that became the nucleus of the 212 premiership team in relation with who else was already there. And
It's amazing how you can fix the hole quickly, though.
Yeah, and I wonder at times looking at clubs, do they look at all the options available to them? Because the mechanisms are there, like the pre-season draft. Like, how many clubs do you see take advantage of the pre-season draft nowadays? Like, really, it's a free kick in front of goal. You don't have to give anything up. You don't have to trade. They're not going through free agency. They're out of contract, and you can just wheel them into there. So, there are clubs that are going to have early picks this year, or could have in the pre-season draft. I don't know why they wouldn't look at Callum Archie. At Brisbane, we did it early on in 1994 with Craig Lambert. Craig was trying to go to North Melbourne. Scotty and Andrew had very little to do with it, except for they gave him the privilege of calling his name. But they went to the board and they said, yeah, well, if you think you can fit him in the TPP, we'll do it. So we called his name, and we probably changed Craig's life, to be honest with you. He went on and had a great career in coaching and player welfare and everything like that. You probably had him at
He's cooked
the
me.
Giants.
Him and his wife have cooked me dinner. They're amazing. Yeah, they've done it. They're one of the most respected people at the Giants. They helped all the young guys when they were young. They'd cook them dinner and have them round. And yeah, it's fascinating you talking about him. Actually, I'll ask him about it next time I see him. So he you kind of snaked him in a sense. That what is he meant to be going to North?
Yeah,
and you guys
was going
said
to North.
We're going to take him because we want him and he's valuable and we don't know what we're going to get, but we'll get something.
Yeah, and we have to get better, and you can get better by, strangely enough, this might shock you, Tommy, but having good players on your list. And Kalachi's a good player.
You're saying, and this is fascinating because so Kalachi didn't go where he desired in trade period.
Yeah, the trade fell over.
It fell over.
Yeah.
And help remind me that it fell over because two parties can't agree on something, right?
Yep.
Yep. And he wants to go to Adelaide from Brisbane. So he wants to go to Adelaide. That's where he wanted to go.
Yeah.
And who's got the number one pick in the preseason?
West Coast.
You're saying West Coast should take him.
Well, he's from WA.
Yep. And you're saying when they take him, I'm just saying if they take him, he has to quickly move on, right? But can he block that? I'm just thinking in my head.
He can't block it.
He can't block it.
No, what a player does, and there's 3 players that have done this leading into this draft, and Cal's one of them. He's nominated his terms and conditions, which is the duration of the contract and the money that he's to be paid.
The West Coast just have to match it.
Yeah, and we haven't. Well, they've got to be able to deliver that and be able to or agree to the terms of the contract, the money and the duration of it, and they can just take him for nothing in the pre-season draft, and he doesn't even get to Adelaide.
And what pick does Adelaide have in the pre-season draft?
Where they finish 6th or wherever they finish, 4th or 6th, whatever.
And
so he won't get to Brisbane, even if Brisbane, because Adelaide will leave a pick. So even if Brisbane said, well, we'll leave a pick in the pre-season draft, Adelaide will get him beforehand. But the pre-season draft, that can't alter. You can't trade those picks.
You can't trade those picks.
No one can jump ahead of you. It's just in order of where you finished on the ladder.
And
that's one of the few things that change. So, yeah, I mean, that's a mechanism that's there. I'm not sure why they wouldn't look at it. And they may. I don't know.
I'm actually very excited. When is the pre-season draft?
It is Friday morning.
Oh, so it's after the national draft.
Yeah,
okay,
so
this will be
the
fascinating.
national draft tomorrow night and Thursday night, and then Friday morning the pre-season draft, which normally goes for 10 seconds, if that, and then we go straight into the rookie draft.
I'm just visualising this, Beats. Help me out. Help me understand this. How competitive are clubs with clubs? Because you guys, from my mind, it's like all you recruiters, you're all mates when I used to see it, but is it very competitive or not? Because I'm only imagining this. West Coast call his name. They'd be that angry. Adelaide would be that pissed off with them. It would cause dramas, but I guess that's the game we're in, right?
Yeah. Well,
there's no code of ethics.
Well, and then there's a third party involved in this, and this is the tricky part. There's a player manager involved in it.
Oh, they'd be angry if that.
So then you've got to work out how many players on our list have they got. So the things that West Coast will also have to
Gotcha.
add into the like. Is this worth the hassle?
So if he had a
of doing
manager,
this.
where who's he managed by? Do you know?
It's a company called Players Inc.
Yeah. So if Players Inc. have a lot of players at Adelaide or Brisbane or that's where
It's
the
more at West Coast,
West Coast.
and then working out is the collateral damage of this call
Worth it. What's the most collateral damage you've seen in a trade or with the player? Don't have to name the player manager or the player, but just why? What was the stickiest point?
Just
Arguing over the money.
no, not so much the money only comes into it if the player is contracted going forward, and the argument comes with what percentage is the club that's trying to move them out is prepared to pay. And that gets very stressful when I'm talking about the trade period now, because that too often comes down to the sort of the last hour. Like, seriously, the trade period could occur in 2 days.
It should. It's
And
just a
it would
media
still-
thing, isn't it?
It's a media thing, and some clubs, you do need to get the players to come and have a look at the club, etc. But most of them, seriously, you should have done it earlier than that anyway, if you're perfectly honest. But where was I going with that?
Just the damage, the collateral damage that you've seen. What's the sticky point?
Sometimes it's egos. I mean, I'm not going to go into names, but there are some player list managers that I think, looking at how they operate, they have to be seen to have the win.
Yeah.
And at the end of the day, it's about, I would have thought, trying to get the player that you want, because you're after that player because they're going to give you a return on what you want, or the draft picks to be able, say Carlton, trying to get the points to be able to match Harry Dean tomorrow night. So it's just do what you need to do in your best interest of the club, rather than trying to be seen to be the winner all the time. Because a year down the track, no one gives a rat's, to be honest. But I've seen that. I mean, people talk about Adrian and this good little friend of ours, Tommy Papley, when Paps was trying to get to Carlton, he had some personal reasons why that was going, and we had a serious interest in Joe Danaher. But Essendon's asking price was too much for us at the time for what we were prepared to give, and Paps was going to end up in part of that, getting that pick.
So like go to Carlton, swap
pick,
et cetera. Three-way
But
trade.
But to be fair, in all my dealings with Adrian, he at times gets a bad rap. He never once tried to dud me or fleece you. What he said at the start was what was still
Why
applying
does he
at
get
the
such
end.
a bad rap, you reckon?
I don't know. I've never had an issue with it. And he, from the start, was, we need 2 first-rounders, and we were, no, that's not what we got, because Joey wasn't terribly fit at the time and had injury issues and all that sort of stuff. But that's funny at times. Like at the trade period of getting towards, I've seen we've seen it this year with better access into the rooms of the clubs. Like you see some
that was
player
wild, wasn't it?
managers and staff.
Tom Petroro is who we're talking about.
Absolutely losing their crap.
Do you sit back and watch the Zach Merritt stuff and find it fascinating as someone on the complete outside, not involved in the trade at all, and just going, are you more, I guess, informed on what you think's going to happen, or were you like us going, we actually don't know what's going to happen here, and you could see how angry Petroro was?
Yeah. Well, it's interesting watching it and the general public watching, because you're not privy to all of the facts. So some of the stuff that's printed in media or comes through from the podcast and stuff like that, it's not always accurate. Could be close, but not always accurate. So I'm always loath to make comment. But it was interesting to see how volatile those situations were becoming. Yeah. Yeah. And I mean, I've been there myself where it's got pretty terse with people, but...
That because someone's not delivering on their word, or...
No. I've never had anybody go back on their word on a deal with us. But what has happened at times is they're just holding on to get the best possible deal for their club. And at the end of the day, I keep saying to the people that I've been not tutoring, but helping to mentoring is try not to take it personally, because at the end of the day, when that person checks their payroll, they'll be paid by their club and you'll be paid by the Sydney Swans. So try to take the personal aspect out of it. It's not personal. Why he's just trying to do the best for his club. So get that into your mind, and then you'll try to be able to work it through.
Yeah, it's good. It's
But
good
part of
feedback.
it in recruiting and list management is to try to have good relationships in the industry. And if you did dud someone, you wouldn't last very long. They will get around too quickly, and then you come up, no one would want to deal with you, etc. It would kill you.
Hi, I'm Shaquille O'Neal. I'm wearing Rick's sunglasses, made in Australia.
Shaq loves Australia.
See?
There we
That's
go.
your first commercial right there.
Head to checkout and use the discount code ACES and you'll get 20% off site-wide. Rick's, eyewear that inspires confidence.